You know, there's something very strong about the time you finally walk away from a narcissist. It's more than just a breakup or ending a bad friendship. It's a huge shock in their world that shakes the base of their fake self. When you step away, you take the thing they need most: your attention, your emotional effort, your approval. For a narcissist, control is like breathing. It keeps their self-image alive. Nice comment, every fight, every reaction you have, even your pain, supports the fake idea they have about themselves. They live off your energy, just like a bug lives off a host. The second you pull that energy away, they start to struggle. And that's when the false idea they live inside, this grand story about how great, charming, or better than others they are, starts to break down. You see, a narcissist does not have a real sense of who they are. They build their identity using what other people think of them. Think of it like a room made of mirrors. Each person they control becomes another reflection, making their image look stronger. But what happens when one of those mirrors breaks? Suddenly, they have to see the flaws. They have to face the truth that under all the charm and control is something empty, a deep, painful void they have run from their whole life. When you leave, you become the first person to hold up a mirror that doesn't show them their fantasy. Your silence tells them something no argument ever could. It tells them you see past the mask. And that truth is too hard for them to take because narcissists are fine with fighting. They are fine with chaos. They're even fine with being hated. But they cannot stand being ignored. Your stepping away shows their biggest fear, that without an audience, without someone reacting to them, they stop mattering in the way they want to. Here is where it gets interesting. Psychologically, this is called narcissistic injury, that sharp emotional hurt they feel when their weak self-image is threatened. But for someone with narcissistic ways, this injury is not just painful. It messes them up. It tears at the core of who they think they are. And the cause? Your absence, your peace, your refusal to take part in their emotional game. They will try to tell themselves that you are easy to replace. They will hurry to find someone new to give them approval, to fill that hole. But deep down, the new person doesn't satisfy them the way your energy did, because what they miss is not you as a person. It's the control they had over you. The easy way they could make you feel things, the ability to make you react. You took away their feeling of power, and now they are rushing to rebuild it somewhere else. But every failed try reminds them that something is wrong. The rush they used to get from controlling you is not coming back, and that's when the cracks get bigger. They start thinking about everything again, not because they are learning or growing, but because they are trying to rewrite the story to understand how someone they thought they owned just walked away. You see, in their mind, walking away is not something people do. It's an act of fighting against their reality. And that fighting causes a deep mental struggle between the picture they have of themselves and the reality they now face. That's why your silence is so strong. It is not passive. It is not running away. It is a form of truth-telling that words cannot achieve. You are showing them that their idea of power does not work on you anymore. And that is a huge blow to someone who built their whole life on the idea of being in charge. This is where philosophy meets psychology. You've heard that truth sets you free, right? But here is the part most people miss. Truth also destroys fake ideas. When you step into your truth, when you finally accept that you cannot save someone who refuses to face themselves, you start breaking down the fake idea they tried to trap you in. It's not about getting back at them, it's reality taking hold, and reality always wins. The narcissist's collapse starts not with your anger, but with your clear sight. When you see them for who they are, not who they pretended to be, you stop feeding their fantasy. You no longer need to explain, justify, or fix things. That's the start of your freedom. And strangely, the start of their mental falling apart, because now, for the first time, they are left alone with the one person they have spent their whole life avoiding, themselves. And make no mistake, that silence you have given them is loud. It echoes in their mind. It haunts them because it forces them to face a truth they cannot twist or change, that their power over you was a fake idea kept alive only by your participation. So, if you are in that stage right now, if you have walked away and you are wondering whether it mattered, whether it made any difference, remember this. The moment you chose peace over confusion, you set off a collapse they cannot recover from. You took back your story. You stopped being their emotional supply and became something they can never be. Whole. The beauty of this change is that it doesn't need fighting, drama, or revenge. Just distance, just silence, just self-respect. And when you choose that, You not only reclaim your strength, you remind every part of yourself that peace is not something you have to earn. It's something you get to protect. In the end, the narcissist's fake idea doesn't break because you fought harder. It collapses because you finally stopped fighting at all. And that's the truth they will never accept, but the truth that will set you free. When you walk away from a narcissist, you're not just ending contact, you're breaking their whole mental system. You have to understand, narcissists aren't just people with big egos. They are people whose entire sense of self relies on outside approval. They live in a kind of mental theater where every person plays a role that makes their superiority, control, or victimhood seem real. And when you leave that stage, the show falls apart. That's when their self-image goes into survival mode. It's not small, it's not sensible, it's raw panic hidden as control. Because to a narcissist, losing control is not just awkward, it's about their survival. Their identity relies on being able to set the emotional tone of the relationship. When you walk away and stop responding, it's like you've switched off the power to their world. And their first instinct is to do whatever it takes to get that power back. So they start the cycle again. You'll see the apologies, the sweet messages, the promises to change. They might show up as the person you always wished they were, kind, caring, emotionally present. It feels almost real because they know exactly how to pretend to be sensitive. But here's the truth. It's not real change. It's a performance. Narcissists don't look deeply at themselves. They plan things out. They're not asking, how can I improve? They're asking, how can I get back control? And when that doesn't work, when you don't answer, when you stay steady and calm, their mask starts to crack. The charm disappears and something darker appears. Anger, fury, a feeling of being owed something. That's when you'll see them switch from I miss you to you'll regret this quickly. It's like watching someone fall apart emotionally. What they're really saying is, how dare you not play your part anymore? This shift is key to understanding because it shows their inner world. A narcissist is not able to have real closeness. What they want is not intimacy, it's influence. They don't want a partner, they want possession. So when you remove yourself, they experience it as a kind of mental death, the death of their control over you. That's why their reactions are so strong, so unpredictable, so confusing. You've taken away the drug. It depended on your emotional availability. The funny thing is that your silence, your refusal to react, is what confuses them the most. Narcissists are skilled at creating emotional messes. They thrive in the noise, anger, tears, fighting. Those are all signs that tell them they still matter to you. But silence scares them because silence says you no longer give them access, and that's a language they don't understand. They might try new moves, pretending they've changed, suddenly becoming spiritual or claiming to be the victim. These are not signs of growth, they're signs of desperation. They're trying on new masks, hoping one will work, but none of it lasts because it's all aimed at one goal, to get a reaction, any reaction. The more you stay separate, the more their attempts get bigger, and the more their true instability shows itself. Here is where psychology meets power. Every person has a self-image, but most of us learn to manage it. We deal with loss, rejection, failure, and we adapt. We grieve, we grow, we build the ability to bounce back. Narcissists can't do that. Their self-image isn't just large, it's weak. It's a balloon filled with air, easily puffed up, easily popped. When you walk away, you're not just taking your presence with you. You're taking away the air that keeps their ego inflated. The result is emotional suffocation. They might lash out publicly, ruin your name, twist the story, get others to take their side. That's their way of getting control back by changing the story. But what they're really doing is proving exactly why you left. They expose themselves through their own behavior, and the longer you remain silent, the more clear it becomes that they are the unstable one, not you. This is where your growth starts to match their falling apart. The moment you stop reacting, you stop feeding their need for drama, you start to see how their control once shaped your feelings, your choices, even your self-worth. You start to understand that every guilt trip, every complaint, every emotional up and down was planned to keep you unsure, because being unsure helps them control you. When you finally see that, their methods lose their power. The philosophical part of this is fascinating. Narcissists live against the truth. They create fake ideas to protect themselves from reality, but truth always finds a way to surface. When you step away, you're forcing them to face that truth, that the world doesn't circle around them, that love cannot be controlled, that admiration cannot be forced. Your absence becomes their teacher, whether they want it or not. And for you, this becomes a turning point because the more you understand their behavior, the less it hurts. You stop taking it personally. You stop asking, why did they treat me like that? And start realizing this was never about me. That understanding is power. It's clarity. It's the moment you shift from victim to observer, from being emotionally tied up to being emotionally free. Now, let's be clear. Your silence is not about hurting them. It's about protecting your peace. It's about refusing to take part in a pattern that feeds dysfunction. Narcissists view everything through control. So they'll see your separation as punishment, but it's not. It's self-respect. It's you saying, I no longer live by your rules. The more steady you remain in that silence, the more they start to collapse inside. They might seem strong on the outside, showing off, moving on quickly, pretending they're fine. But those are just performances for survival. Inside, the emptiness is growing because what they can't replace is the emotional strength you once gave them. They can find someone new, but they can't recreate the version of themselves that existed when they had control over you. That version is gone forever. And this is the deeper truth. When you remove yourself from their control, you're not just getting free, you're forcing them to face the reality they've avoided all along. That's the real reason their self-image starts to crumble. It's not because you punished them. It's because you showed through your absence how little power they really have. So if you're in that stage right now, the stage where they're trying everything to pull you back, remember, every ignored message, every boundary you hold, every moment you choose peace over reaction is another step toward your freedom and their downfall. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to answer, explain, or defend. You just have to stay still, because sometimes the strongest message you can send is silence. The moment a narcissist realizes that they've truly lost control over you, something inside them begins to break. At first, they'll deny it. They'll tell themselves that you're the problem, that you'll come back begging, that they're still the one in charge. But beneath that denial, a quiet panic starts to grow. And eventually it becomes a storm they can't stop. This is the start of what experts call a narcissistic collapse. And it's much more than just an emotional outburst. It's the falling apart of a whole identity that was built on lies, control, and fake ideas. A narcissist doesn't feel lost the way you or I do. Most people, when faced with rejection or a breakup, feel pain, sadness, maybe even guilt. But they deal with it. They learn from it. A narcissist can't. Their entire self-image is built around being better than others, unbeatable, and the idea that they're always right. So when they lose someone who once supported that fake idea, they don't just feel hurt, they feel completely destroyed. Your absence becomes a threat to their mind, not just an emotional one. Here's what makes this collapse so complicated. Narcissists are emotionally immature. They've spent a lifetime avoiding the kind of openness that creates real closeness or responsibility. Instead, they use control and manipulation to manage their feelings. When those methods stop working, they're left without defense, like a child throwing a fit in an adult body. Their rage, suspicion, and self-harm are all desperate attempts to escape one truth that is too hard to bear. They are no longer in control. You'll often see the collapse happen in steps. First comes the denial, the big performance that everything is fine. They might show off a new relationship, post about how happy they are, or act as if losing you was part of their plan. But if you look closer, you'll see the cracks. The constant need to prove they've moved on is actually proof that they are focused on you. They're not celebrating freedom. They're trying too hard to make up for the loss of control. Then when that show starts to fail, when the high of pretending wears off, rage takes over, not the kind of rage that comes from sadness, but a cold, focused fury aimed at destroying anything that reminds them of you. They might lash out, spread lies, or put their own confusion onto others. It's all an attempt to send the chaos outside of themselves. Because if they can make you the problem, they don't have to face the emptiness inside themselves. But here's where the collapse deepens. Once the rage is gone, they're forced to face what's left. And what's left is nothing, no control, no approval, no audience, just silence. And for a narcissist, silence is too hard to bear because it forces them into a kind of self-awareness they've avoided their entire life. They start to feel the weight of their own emptiness. The same emptiness they've tried to fill with praise, attention, and dominance now stares back at them like a void. At this stage, they may swing between extremes: depression, suspicion, risky behavior, even desperation. They might reach out again, not because of love, but because they need to feel powerful again. They'll say things like, "I've changed," or "I miss you," but those words mean nothing. What they really mean is, "I need to feel powerful again." And if you give them that chance, they'll rebuild the fake idea just to avoid facing themselves. What makes this process interesting and sad is that it shows how weak their self-image truly is. Behind all the pride and control is a deep psychological reliance. They need others not for connection, but for identity. They've spent their lives building a false self, a character designed to protect them from their own insecurity. But when that false self collapses, they're left with nothing real to rely on. No true self-esteem, no empathy, no emotional strength, just pieces of who they pretended to be. From a philosophical point of view, this collapse is almost perfect. It's the universe setting things right. For so long, the narcissist operated outside of truth, twisting it, messing it up, denying it. But truth always finds a way to catch up. Your silence, your boundaries, your refusal to engage, all of that becomes a mirror showing reality back at them. And that reality breaks the fantasy they built. It shows them that control isn't love, manipulation isn't strength, and dominance isn't power. Meanwhile, you're changing. As they collapse, you start to rise not with pride, but with awareness. You start to see that their chaos was never your job to fix. You realize that peace is not found in trying to change them, but in walking away and letting them face the results of their own behavior. That's the mental turning point where your strength meets their downfall. And this is the hard truth. You cannot save them from this collapse. You can't talk sense into them or love them into healing. That's not how narcissism works. Their collapse is their lesson, not your burden. The best thing you can do is stay grounded, separate, and focused on your own recovery. Because every time you get involved, you feed the fake idea again. Every time you respond, you give their self-image air, and the only way their collapse leads to any kind of lesson is if the silence remains unbroken. What happens to them next is different for everyone. Some will fall into self-destruction, drug abuse, bad relationships, financial ruin. Others will ignore their feelings with denial and start the cycle with someone new. But a small few, and this is rare, may actually start to face the emptiness and look for real help. That's not your job to wait for or hope for. Your role is simply to step out of the way and let cause and effect do its work. Because here's the contradiction. By walking away, you've already done the strongest thing you could ever do. You've broken the pattern. You've refused to be their emotional base. And in doing that, you've forced life to hold up a mirror they can't look away from. Whether they learn from it or not is out of your hands. But your part in this story, claiming your peace, that's where the real change happens. So when you start to wonder what's happening to them, when that old care creeps in and you feel tempted to check in, remember this. They are facing the results of their own choices. You don't need to see it. You don't need to approve it. You just need to stay on your path. There's a very specific moment that marks the turning point in your healing. The moment you stop trying to prove anything to the narcissist, and instead you choose peace, not silence out of fear, but silence out of strength. You stop explaining, you stop defending, you stop reacting, and for the first time, you're no longer caught up in their chaos. That's when everything starts to change. Not just for you, but for them. Because the very separation that frees you is the same power that pushes them toward collapse. When you step away, you take away the power they never should have had in the first place. You break the emotional contract that said, you get to decide how I see myself. And when you take that back, they don't just lose control over you, they lose the reflection that kept their self-image alive. They've spent years writing the story where they are the center of your emotional world. Every reaction you gave, anger, confusion, heartbreak, kept that story going. So when you stop participating, their story no longer works. You become the mirror that refuses to show their fake idea. This is why stepping away feels so upsetting to them. It's not just your absence that hurts them, it's the empty space you leave behind. Because now they're alone with themselves. And that's their biggest fear. They have to face what they've avoided their entire life. The emptiness underneath the mask. And the thing about emptiness is it's loud. It echoes. It demands attention. You can't manipulate your way out of it. That's the space where their collapse begins, but your freedom starts. Your stepping away is not coldness, it's clarity. It's you finally realizing that peace doesn't need to be defended and your worth doesn't need to be proven. It's the understanding that not every fight deserves your effort, especially not the ones that keep you tied to someone else's confusion. The narcissist will see your separation as punishment, but it isn't. It's protection. It's the highest form of self-respect. You're no longer trying to get closure from someone who benefits from keeping the door open. What's amazing about this process is that the more you step away, the more you start to see the truth with sharper sight. You notice the patterns you used to miss, the way they twist facts, act like the victim, or pretend to change just long enough to keep you interested. You start to see how every emotional reaction they caused wasn't by accident. It was planned. And when you stop reacting, you see the whole plan. You begin to understand that their power was never real. It was borrowed, and you were the source. This is where philosophy meets psychology. Again, there's an old principle that says the closer you move to peace, the less you need other people's approval. That's the core of this change. You realize you don't need to win the argument. You don't need to convince them of the truth. You don't even need them to understand the pain they caused, because understanding is not needed for healing. Acceptance is, and acceptance begins when you step away from their chaos and focus your energy on yourself. The narcissist, meanwhile, starts falling apart because while you're finding peace, they're losing control. They can't understand that. Being calm is stronger than anger. To them, attention is still attention, whether it's good or bad. But being calm and separate, that's starvation. That's the slow death of their fake idea. They start realizing that their manipulation doesn't work anymore. The guilt trips, the love bombing, the fake sadness, it all falls flat when you don't respond. And the more they try to provoke you, the more they show their own desperation. You start to see the difference. While they're stuck in a cycle of chaos and control, you're learning emotional freedom. You start sleeping better. You think more clearly. You feel stronger, not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped measuring your worth through their approval. You stopped letting their dysfunction define who you are. You became your own source of peace. And that shift, that internal change, is the one thing they can't handle, because your growth is the ultimate proof of their failure. They wanted you to stay small, reactive, dependent. They wanted you to keep explaining yourself, to keep defending your reality against their lies. But when you walk away and stay separate, you're saying, you don't get to define my reality anymore. And that's the moment their entire fake idea collapses, because the narcissist's power never came from who they are. It came from what you believed about them. When you stop believing in the fake idea, they lose their identity. This is the irony. You don't destroy them by fighting back. You destroy the illusion by growing past it. That's what true separation is. It's not getting revenge. It's evolution. It's the quiet knowing that you've stepped into a higher state of awareness where their chaos can't reach you anymore. And that's when your life starts to grow again. You begin to find out who you are outside of their control. Your interest, your voice, your peace. You start to trust your feelings again. You start to love without fear. And here's the beautiful part. As you rise, their downfall will happen. Because narcissists can't survive in a place where they no longer control the story. They start to panic, to struggle, to search for someone new to reflect their fantasy. But every new person they find becomes another reminder of what they lost. The one who walked away, the one who stayed silent, the one who found peace. They can't escape that, because in their world, control is everything. And you took it back without saying a word. That's why your separation is their collapse. It's the change in energy that completely turns the tables. You move from being their emotional supply to being their silent result. You become living proof that peace is more powerful than control. And that's what finally breaks them. Not your anger, not your pain, but your calm. Because your calm shows the truth. It shows that their power was a fake idea all along. So don't undervalue the quiet strength of stepping away. It's not weakness, it's skill. It's knowing that sometimes the greatest statement you can make is no statement at all. It's choosing your energy over their chaos, your peace over their performance, your future over their past. That's how you win, by not playing the game anymore. And the more you stay separate, the more your life starts to match clarity, purpose, and self-respect. You stop thinking too much about their reaction, and you start focusing on your direction. You stop needing to be understood, and you start needing to be at peace. That's the change that truly scares them, because it's lasting. Once you've had a taste of peace, you never crave confusion again. When you step away from the narcissist, you don't just walk away, you rise above. Your silence becomes the proof of your healing, and their collapse becomes the echo of the power you claimed back.